My name is Linda Harper. I'm 35 years old, and I am the CEO of Prestige Catering, a luxury event planning company with 75 employees and 4 branches across the United States. To the outside world, I look like the very definition of success: polished, efficient, and in control of every glittering celebration I create for clients. Yet inside my own family, the picture could not be more different. For the past 18 years, despite all I have built, I have been treated less like a daughter of privilege and more like a servant. My family, old money Bostonians who pride themselves on tradition and appearances, never once celebrated my achievements. At every holiday, every gathering, I was pushed into the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, while my younger sister, Emily, 29, a marketing specialist with a flair for charm, basked in attention. She was praised as the star, free to boast about her connections, while I was quietly sidelined. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. But on Christmas Eve last year, everything shifted. My mother, Catherine Harper, 62, a well-known philanthropist admired in Boston's elite circles, called me with a demand that felt like the final straw. With only 18 hours' notice, she expected me to prepare an extravagant holiday dinner for 30 of Emily's VIP guests. No apology, no acknowledgement of how unreasonable the request was, just the assumption that I would drop everything, sacrifice my time, and deliver perfection, as I always had. That night, as I stood in my own kitchen staring at the endless to-do list, something inside me hardened. Enough was enough. I realized that my silence had allowed this pattern to continue for nearly 2 decades. I wasn't just enabling their disregard, I was training them to believe I didn't matter. What followed was not simply another family argument. It became a turning point that unraveled carefully maintained illusions and forced hidden truths into the open. In the days that followed, secrets surfaced, secrets powerful enough to shake reputations. Even Rebecca Langston, a Fortune 500 CEO known for her composure, was left stunned. She looked me in the eye, and for the first time in my life, I heard someone of her stature call me boss. If you've ever felt overlooked or diminished by the people who should have valued you most, stay with me. And if my story resonates, hit like, share, and comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read every word. Now, let me take you back to that fateful night. How it all began. I was standing in my Chicago penthouse, a suitcase half-packed on the bed, when my phone rang. The name flashing across the screen made my stomach tighten. Catherine Harper, my mother. Calls from her were never light-hearted. They always carried weight, a tone of command rather than care. "Linda," her voice cut in the moment I answered, sharp and cold as a knife. "Cancel whatever plans you have tomorrow. Emily is hosting a Christmas party for her networking group. 30 guests, all executives from Langston Enterprises. You'll be at the house in Boston by 10 a.m. to cook. 8 entrees, 12 sides. I've already written the menu." Her words weren't a request, they were an order. My grip on the phone tightened as my gaze drifted to my open laptop. On the screen was an unread email from Rebecca Langston herself, CEO of Langston Enterprises, the very company Emily was trying to impress. I was on the verge of finalizing a $3 million contract with Rebecca. If my mother knew, what would she think? Would she even care, or would she still treat my work as secondary to Emily's social calendar? "Mom, I have business tomorrow," I said carefully, forcing calm into my voice. "What business could possibly be more important than family?" she snapped. Her tone rose, carrying that familiar mix of disdain and dismissal. I glanced at the flight confirmation open on my desk. Miami, departure 7 p.m. tomorrow. The deal with Rebecca required me to be there in person. Missing it wasn't an option. Not if I valued my company, my employees, and everything I had fought to build. "Mom, I can't," I said more firmly this time. Silence. Then the sound of her scoffing through the line. "Don't be selfish, Linda. These people are important. Unlike you." The words landed like a blow, though I had heard versions of them my whole life. They still had the power to sting, to drag me back into the role I had been assigned since childhood, the overlooked daughter, the one relegated to the kitchen while Emily sparkled in the spotlight. And just like that, the call ended. No goodbye, no chance for me to explain. Just the hollow click of finality. I stood frozen, phone in hand, staring at the half-packed suitcase. Penthouse around me, usually a symbol of my independence and success, felt suddenly claustrophobic. My chest tightened as memories surged, Christmas after Christmas, holiday after holiday, where I was ordered to serve while Emily entertained. Times when my accomplishments were brushed aside, dismissed as trivial compared to my sister's charm. I set the phone down slowly, as though it were something fragile, and sat on the edge of the bed. My gaze lingered on the suitcase, on the neat stacks of clothing waiting for Miami, and I felt the familiar ache rise in my throat. An ache that whispered of years of unacknowledged sacrifices, of a life lived proving my worth to people who refused to see it. For the first time, I wondered if this was the moment I would stop playing their game. 18 years of being invisible. Since I was 17, I had always been the one in the background. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, every celebration carried the same script. I would be in the kitchen, apron tied tight, sweating over stoves and trays, while Emily floated through the rooms in her expensive dresses, dazzling relatives and guests. She was always introduced as the talented marketing professional, the family's pride, the golden daughter. And me? I was simply there, working, unnoticed, unseen. I remember Emily's engagement party last year. 16 hours straight I worked in the kitchen, orchestrating every dish, timing every course so that nothing fell apart. By the time I finally stepped out for a sip of water, my dress stained with flour and my hair clinging to my face, a guest turned to my mother and asked politely, "And what does Linda do?" My mother laughed, loud and sharp enough to slice through me. "Linda? Oh, she doesn't have Emily's gift for people, but she's good with food." The room chuckled politely. My heart clenched. I clenched my jaw too, swallowing the humiliation, burying it deep where no one could see. What none of them knew was that in silence, behind the facade of invisibility, I was building something extraordinary. Prestige Catering was not a hobby or a side hustle. It was my creation, a company that had quietly served billionaires, celebrities, and Fortune 500 CEOs. I had orchestrated events more grand than anything Emily had ever attended, yet my family never asked, never cared. To them, I was jobless, scraping by in some shabby apartment. They had no idea I lived in a penthouse in downtown Chicago, that I drove a Porsche, that the world outside of Boston saw me as a woman of authority and vision. The disregard wasn't only in words, it was carved into the very walls of my childhood home. I will never forget the day I came back one summer, only to discover my bedroom had been stripped bare. My mother had transformed it into a storage room for Emily's belongings. "Emily needs more space to build her image," she had said dismissively, waving her hand as if the explanation were obvious, as if my existence was negotiable. Meanwhile, Emily was granted the entire third floor, renovated into her personal office suite, complete with gleaming furniture and shelves lined with books about branding and influence. I stood in the doorway of my former room, staring at boxes stacked where my bed had once been, the wallpaper peeling, my posters gone. It was as if I had never lived there at all. The deepest cut came last year, in a moment so sharp it still makes my chest ache. I had gone down to the basement, searching for an old photo album, when I found a trash bag by the furnace. Inside it was my childhood journal, pages I had filled with teenage dreams, scribbled notes about becoming someone important one day, confessions I had never dared to say aloud. The notebook had been torn in half, tossed away like garbage. I held those shredded pages in my hands and something inside me broke. It was more than neglect, it was erasure. They had not only dismissed my achievements, they had erased my very story. That was the moment, the final drop in a bucket that had been overflowing for years. I made a silent vow then and there. Never again would I allow them to define my worth. From that day on, I stopped waiting for recognition, stopped hoping for their approval. I knew my value, and it was time they learned it too. The decision to change. That night, as I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the half-packed suitcase, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Emily. "Mom said you're cooking tomorrow. Don't mess it up, these are important people." I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. My eyes drifted to the flight ticket resting on my nightstand. Flight 532 to Miami. Departure 7 p.m. That ticket represented not just a business trip, but the culmination of years of work. This time, no, I whispered to myself. Tomorrow wasn't about me finally standing up to my family. It was about something far larger, the future of Prestige Catering. I had a scheduled meeting with Rebecca Langston, CEO of Langston Enterprises, to finalize an exclusive contract covering 5 of their luxury resorts. The deal wasn't just about money. It was a dream, the kind of opportunity that could redefine everything for my 75 employees. I thought of Sarah, my head chef, who had just closed on her first home after years of renting. I thought of Michael, my operations manager, who was saving every extra dollar to send his daughter to a good school. This contract meant stability for them. It meant growth. It meant that all the sacrifices we had made together were about to bear fruit. My chest tightened with clarity. No party, no demand from my mother, no manipulative text from Emily was worth risking the livelihood of the people who had trusted me, followed me, and built this company alongside me. I picked up the phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice sharp. "Linda, I assume you're on your way here?" "Mom," I said, steadying my tone, "I can't do it. I have a business trip tomorrow." There was a pause. Then came her laugh, cold, dismissive, the kind that always made me feel 12 years old again. "A business trip? Who do you think you are? Emily needs this, and you—" "I am the CEO of a company with 75 employees," I interrupted, my voice firmer than I expected. Her laughter grew harsher, tinged with scorn. "CEO? Of what? Some imaginary company you made up? Don't fool yourself, Linda. You've always been nothing compared to Emily." Her words burned, but for the first time in my life, they didn't stick. They slid off like water off glass. I drew in a deep breath. "I won't be coming, Mom." Her tone dropped to a venomous hiss. "If you walk away from this family, don't bother coming back. You'll no longer have a place here." For a heartbeat, fear clutched my chest, the old fear of rejection, of being cast out. But then I realized I had already been living outside their circle my entire life. Their acceptance had always been an illusion, dangled in front of me like bait. "I understand," I said quietly. And then, with a calm finality, I ended the call. My hands trembled as I set the phone down, not from fear, but from the strange electric rush of freedom. Coursed through me, leaving me unsteady and exhilarated all at once. For the first time in 18 years, I had chosen myself. I looked at the suitcase again, the ticket to Miami waiting patiently beside it. My reflection in the glass window of the penthouse looked different, stronger, bolder, a woman who was finally stepping out of the shadows. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The night of the disaster. I boarded my flight to Miami on time, leaving Boston and the endless cycle of demands behind me. For once, I felt light, as though the weight of 18 years had been cut loose. By the time the plane touched down, my phone was already buzzing with notifications. The next morning, as sunlight spilled into my hotel room, I finally checked my messages. They were overflowing. Emily, Mom is losing it. Kitchen is empty and guests are arriving in an hour. What are you doing? Moments later, another. How could you do this to us? I could almost picture the chaos, my mother pacing furiously, Emily shrieking in panic, the Grand Harper residence unprepared for its so-called glittering event. By 7 p.m., the situation had spiraled beyond repair. They had to call Pizza Hut, of all places, because no fine dining restaurant would take a last-minute order for 30 VIPs. And so, in the grand dining room, beneath crystal chandeliers and portraits of ancestors, my mother, Catherine Harper, the self-styled queen of flawless events, was forced to serve greasy pizza slices on fine gold-plated china. The image was almost too surreal to believe. Emily's final text came in rapid, furious bursts. Rebecca Langston was disgusted. Everyone left early. Mom says you've gone insane. I leaned back against the plush pillows of my resort suite, a slow smile tugging at my lips. Their disaster no longer belonged to me. It was theirs to own, theirs to explain. I ordered breakfast from room service, fresh fruit, smoked salmon, coffee served in delicate porcelain. And as I sipped my cappuccino, I thought of the meeting ahead. In just a few hours, I would sit down with Rebecca Langston herself, not as Emily's forgotten sister, not as Catherine's overlooked daughter, but as the CEO of Prestige Catering. My path was finally my own. The moment of revelation. That evening, the meeting room at Langston Enterprises carried a quiet tension, the hum of fluorescent lights bouncing off sleek glass walls. I sat upright, my hands folded over the portfolio I had prepared for Rebecca Langston, my pulse steady despite the lingering adrenaline from Boston. The door opened, and there she was. Rebecca, looking exhausted but composed, stepping in with a faint frown. "Linda, I'm so sorry I'm late," she said, her tone warm yet hurried. "I just came from the strangest party in Boston." My heart thumped, but I forced calm. "Strange how?" she exhaled, sinking into the chair across from me. The Harper house promised an extravagant dinner, supposedly cooked by their daughter. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing, except pizza. Catherine kept berating her eldest daughter, calling her a failure, useless. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She held out her phone, flipping through images. There was my mother, face flushed with anger, standing beside a pile of pizza boxes stacked on the antique wooden table. The room, meant to be a showcase of elegance, had been reduced to chaos. And there I was, blurred in the background of the photos, invisible yet unmistakably present. The next morning, I walked into the sleek boardroom of Langston Enterprises with renewed confidence. I began my presentation on Prestige Catering, highlighting our luxury events, our award-winning menus, and our unparalleled service. Every slide, every point was perfect. My voice was steady, resonant, precise, and persuasive. Then the door opened quietly. Rebecca's assistant entered, holding an iPad. "Ms. Langston, there are photos from the Boston party going viral on Twitter," she said. Rebecca glanced at me, then at the images scrolling across the screen. There I was, standing behind my mother and sister, barely noticeable in one photo after another. A voice from across the room asked, "Linda, is that you?" I nodded. "Yes. And that is my mother, Catherine Harper." A hush fell over the room. Rebecca shook her head in disbelief, then laughed, a rich, genuine sound that filled the space. "Your mother calls you a failure, but you are the CEO I've wanted to work with for 2 years." She turned to her laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. Within moments, she pulled up search results. Linda Harper, accomplished entrepreneur, Prestige Catering wins national awards, luxury events executed flawlessly by Linda Harper. Every accolade I had quietly earned was there, visible to the world. Rebecca picked up her phone and dialed. "Catherine, this is Rebecca Langston. I just signed a $3 million contract with Linda Harper, CEO of Prestige Catering." The phone clicked. My mother's voice was caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. her composure unraveling with every syllable. She had no words. Then came the tweet, a simple, gleaming announcement on Rebecca's verified account. Excited to partner with #Linda Harper, CEO of #Prestige Catering. Boston, watch this space. And she tagged Catherine Harper. Within minutes, my phone exploded. Messages flooded in, each one more incredulous than the last. Linda, Mom fainted. You tricked the whole family. Is this really happening? I leaned back in my chair, letting the rush of triumph wash over me. For years, I had been invisible, dismissed, and underestimated. Now, in the span of a few hours, the world and my family saw me clearly. Not as the overlooked daughter, not as the quiet sister in the background, but as the leader, the CEO, the woman they had all ignored for too long. I couldn't help smiling. For the first time, I had turned the tables entirely, and it felt exhilarating. Chaos in Boston, the ridicule, the years of neglect, all of it had led to this defining moment. And in that boardroom, under the watchful eyes of a Fortune 500 CEO and a room full of executives, I realized something profound. I was no longer invisible. Aftermath and boundaries. The world seemed to shift overnight. A Forbes article appeared, bold and unapologetic. From invisible to invaluable, how Linda Harper built an empire without her family. The accompanying photo showed me signing the $3 million contract with Rebecca Langston, my pen steady, my posture unshakable. The headline alone caused a ripple, but the image drove the point home. I was no longer the invisible daughter in the shadow of Emily Harper. I was a force in my own right. The effect on my family was immediate and undeniable. Emily, once celebrated as the marketing prodigy of our social circles, lost a $700,000 marketing contract. Clients cited her reliance on family connections as unreliable. Suddenly, her brilliance seemed insufficient without her sister's foundation. My mother, Catherine, was removed from a prestigious charitable board she had long used as her platform. Her influence waned as the world watched, astonished at the collapse of the Harper perfection facade. And my father, Robert, 65, a retired attorney known for his measured judgment, faced scrutiny from friends and colleagues who wondered how he had allowed his wife to dictate the family narrative so completely. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my father. His voice was heavy with emotion, something I hadn't heard in years. Linda, he began, I need to admit something. Your mother was wrong to define you as a failure. I should have spoken up, but I didn't. I failed you. For a moment, I let the silence stretch between us, savoring the honesty. Thank you for saying that, Dad, I replied softly. It means more than you know. 3 months later, I arranged a face-to-face meeting with my family at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant in Chicago, far enough from Boston to leave the old dynamics behind. I knew I could no longer allow the past to dictate our interactions. I laid out my terms clearly: mutual respect, no treatment of me as a servant, a public apology, and participation in family therapy to confront the years of ingrained patterns. Conversation was tense at first. My mother's eyes filled with tears, her voice shaking as she admitted her envy. I was jealous, Linda, she confessed. I couldn't bear that everyone saw Emily as perfect while I ignored your success. Emily, too, lowered her gaze, a mixture of shame and relief crossing her face. Mom's favoritism gave me advantages, but it came at the cost of my sister. I see that now. I'm sorry, Linda. The acknowledgement of years of pain was cathartic. They agreed to the conditions. For the first time, I felt the weight of generational patterns begin to shift. 6 months later, I invited them to my penthouse for a dinner prepared entirely by the team of Prestige Catering. The night was elegant, calm, a study in balance and control. My mother, now actively attending therapy, publicly apologized at the dinner club gathering, a gesture of accountability that signaled the beginning of her genuine transformation. Emily, more composed and self-aware, presented a marketing proposal for my company, one I was carefully reviewing with interest. My father's pride was palpable, and he introduced me to friends and colleagues for the first time as my daughter, the CEO. In the months that followed, Prestige Catering expanded to 120 employees. The company gained national recognition. A Food Network documentary showcased our journey, highlighting not only the events we produced but also the resilience, vision, and leadership that had propelled our growth. The world now saw what I had known all along. Skill, dedication, and character are not dictated by family approval. Every interaction with my family now carried clear boundaries, mutual respect, and accountability. I was no longer their invisible worker or the overlooked daughter. I had cultivated independence, asserted authority, and reclaimed the narrative of my own life. Each achievement, each recognition, each new client served as a reminder that my value was inherent, not contingent on the approval of those who once dismissed me. Transformation was not only external but internal. I had learned to measure my worth by my own standards, to trust in my instincts, and to recognize that success is most powerful when combined with integrity. I also understood the importance of teaching others, my employees, my colleagues, my team, that respect and recognition are earned through consistent effort and authentic leadership. Looking back, the journey from invisibility to prominence was not instantaneous. It required confronting painful truths, asserting boundaries, and demanding accountability from those who had consistently undermined me. Process tested patience, courage, and resilience, but it also revealed the profound satisfaction of defining oneself on one's own terms. Now I stand tall not as a shadowed figure in my family's story, but as Linda Harper, CEO, visionary, and woman of unshakable self-worth. I have learned that value is not given, it is claimed. And in claiming mine, I have transformed not only my career and company but also the dynamics of my family, ensuring that future generations will see the Harper legacy not as a tale of favoritism, but as a story of perseverance, recognition, and respect. No longer invisible, no longer subordinate. I am Linda Harper, and I define my own worth. The reflection and lessons learned. As I sit in my penthouse, the city lights of Chicago twinkling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, I often find myself reflecting on the journey that brought me here. From the girl who silently scrubbed dishes at family gatherings to the CEO of a nationally recognized catering empire, the path was anything but easy. The battles, the moments of invisibility, and the endless need to prove myself were all stepping stones that shaped the woman I have become. Looking back, I realize there are 5 key lessons I want to share with anyone who has ever felt overlooked, undervalued, or dismissed. 1. Recognize your own worth. No one else gets to define your value. For years, I let my family's perception dictate my self-esteem, believing I was only as worthy as their approval allowed. Success begins with acknowledging your inherent value and refusing to let anyone diminish it. 2. Set boundaries without apology. Boundaries are not about creating conflict, they're about protecting your dignity and focus. When I finally told my mother I would not cook that Christmas party, it was terrifying yet liberating. Clear boundaries allowed me to prioritize what truly mattered: my business, my team, and my dreams. 3. Pursue your vision relentlessly. Even while overlooked, I quietly built Prestige Catering. Dreams require dedication, patience, and sometimes working unseen until the right moment. Your vision is worth the effort, even if recognition comes later. 4. Transform adversity into fuel. Every slight, every dismissal, every "you can't" I endured became motivation. The moments of pain were catalysts, pushing me to achieve what others assumed impossible. Adversity can either crush you or empower you, it's your choice which path to take. 5. Seek reconciliation, not revenge. Success without personal growth is hollow. Establishing respect and accountability in my family required honesty, empathy, and therapy. While I could have allowed resentment to dominate, I chose dialogue and set conditions for meaningful change. The result was not only professional triumph but also personal peace. Today, my family sees me differently. My mother, Emily, and even my father have grown alongside me, learning to respect boundaries and acknowledge accomplishments. And while my path was shaped by conflict, the lessons extend far beyond my family. They apply to workplaces, friendships, and every environment where someone's voice may be overlooked. If you have ever had to fight to be seen, to be heard, or to assert your worth, know that you are not alone. Every step toward recognition, every boundary set, and every dream pursued builds the foundation for a life of dignity and fulfillment. I invite you to share your story in the comments below. Your experience matters, and together we can create a community that celebrates resilience, courage, and self-respect. If my journey resonated with you, please hit like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue to lift each other up, learn from one another, and remind ourselves that our value is inherent, not contingent on anyone else's acknowledgement. Remember, no one can define you but yourself. Stand tall, trust your journey, and never let anyone else write your story. I am Linda Harper, and I reclaimed my worth, and so can you.